We
Okay,
turned on?
that's much better. Thanks,
Oh, I
Jamie.
forgot my hearing aids.
So I think that I will go ahead now and call the meeting to order. It is 6:32, and we have two commissioners absent. Apparently, our new commissioner from the city of Cotati is not going to be able to make it tonight. Is that?
Yeah, there was an email saying he was ill.
Okay, I
did see
haven't
that
seen
one.
it. So.
You said it.
And Paul Grill is, I believe, out of state and unreachable right now, so he cannot even join us by Skype. So I'll call the meeting to order. We're going to skip announcements at this time and go to public appearances for members of the public who wish to address the commission regarding items not on the agenda. Now is the time for you to come forward and speak, please. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland. I wanted to thank you for the Monday hours at the Roseland Library, which is open right now, all the way until 9. I was like, yeah, baby, this is the good stuff. So thank you so much for that. I know that there's a lot that goes on in making decisions such as this return to previous levels of service. But I believe now that we've been getting some recent stories telling us how funding levels are improving with the county, that you folks should be able to go ahead and ask for the whole enchilada. Just get it back as good as it was once before. Have it be even better in the future. With that in mind, I'd come and spoken with you in the past about the efforts to get a freestanding, single occupancy Roseland library. And people looked askance and said, well, we're already planning something. We've already got this thing we're working up. And, how can you just step up? And I said, well, in Roseland, you just have to learn to step up. Because if you don't want to get anything, you have to come in and try to be in the mix. With that said, I spoke with some members of my graduating high school class, people I've known since I was a boy at Roseland School, who are Pomo Indians. They're now officially elders. Me, I'm just an old white guy. But they got the elder title, and they were like, yes, let's find ways to work with positive things for Roseland. So I explained what was happening and how it would be wonderful if we could have a separate, independent, single occupancy, freestanding Roseland Library. And then the Boys and Girls Club could get their single occupancy club in another building. And people are like, well, we're broke and everything's tough. We can't do those kinds of things. But I was like, many of the people that live in Roseland work for some of the richest people in the county. We see the vans dropping them off, bringing them in from the big wineries to the north of us. So there's money in this county that could be utilized to help some of those people who are a bit disadvantaged. And so my Pomo friends, my Latino friends, and myself, we're working up something to be the first fundraiser. It's called the Remedies for Roseland. And Remedies is actually the name of a band that belongs to Steve Pavros and other Santa Rosa folks. He's a Latino musician, and he's willing to work with us to help start with the fundraising to try to get as much money as possible in the future, millions upon millions of dollars, as our new fearless leader would say, for the most fantastic library we could ever get. And that's what we're going to try for the Roseland Community Library. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ended early. That's rare, huh? Do you want this back down? Anybody else? All right.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the Commission. My name is Jeremy Nichols. I represent tonight the Sonoma County Historical Society and the Sonoma County Genealogical Society. I sit on both their boards. I want to thank you first for the extended hours at the library. We especially appreciate better access to the local history and genealogy annex on 3rd Street here in Santa Rosa. Thank you very much. Secondly, we have a request. We are interested in doing anything we can to help you come up with a plan to relocate the Sonoma County Archives, which are managed for the county by the library, somewhere closer to downtown, and make some arrangements to have a building and staff that would allow public access. I've used the archives extensively in my books and in my forthcoming book on the history of the Sonoma County Hospital, and I can tell you they are absolutely vital for the records they contain, but so hard to get at. So if there's anything we can do to help you make that happen, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do we have your contact information?
You will.
Any other members of the public wishing to address the commission at this time? All right, seeing none, we are going to... I'm sorry. Come on down, Thomas.
You need the mic.
At the last moment, I did want to thank you for extending the hours. That's really great. More service is really fantastic, and thank you for that. I have used the Genealogical Society before, and they actually requested a loan from New England, and the material came. It was microfiche and microfilm, and then it was very instrumental, very helpful for me. I was able to go from there, and New England has an extensive network of genealogists, and they all work together. And from there, I was able to find all kinds of historical things from my family. Really fantastic. It was very helpful, I have to say. And extending those hours is very important, because people that are here have come from over there, most of it, except if they came from Asia, then they might be a little different. But so I want to thank you for that, and the extension of hours, and this interesting point about the Sonoma County Archives, and particularly I'm very interested in this Sonoma County Hospital book, and I want to get his information on that. It's incredibly important about what was up at that hospital. Essentially began as an infirmary, and which was they just covered you over with a sheet when you passed, and basically they fed you while you laid there eventually. And there's the pauper graves, and all of those things are really very interesting. And it's really incredibly important to have those materials, the information on those, because that establishes the value of what will be lost, if you will, when those public assets are converted for private use. So those the two parts of the public assets were the hospital itself, which is now contained within the Sutter, and the land itself, which is now going to be converted to private access. So all of those things that were there were converted to, are now converted to private use effectively, or going to be, similar to Blue Cross and Blue Shield, which was a nonprofit hospital, was converted for private use, and had to, for the California, had to provide a $1 billion fund called the California Endowment. So in that conversion was $1 billion had to be set aside, which created the California Endowment, just for the conversion of those hospital assets from not-for-profit to for-profit, because of the asset that was created by all of the activity that they had done as a nonprofit. And that's so important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no additional public wishing to speak to the commission, we will adjourn to closed session, and it is about, 6:40. 7:42, and I estimate that we will probably not be back till 7:30.
Had the public, and now I would like to comment on the closed session. Public comment on the closed session.
Okay.
So thank you. I came to the closed session to comment with the directors committee, and I wanted to mention that, and that I've had a couple of meetings with the director, and I want to say he's great, and I even want to amplify my comments a moment ago when we spoke, which was that as you mentioned about Pat Kuda and of course Gregory Fearon, who are really great people, and then of course I mentioned Tim Schmidt and what he did, but maybe with the director we have another person like that who is such a vital person for our community, that and his foresight, as I spoke with him and as I mentioned, and you can as you know what I said before, but you may amplify that with the other members of your committee, that he appears to be one of the type of people that is a great resource, and glad to have him, and thank you very much. That's fun.
Thank you very much, Thomas. All right, so at 7:44 we'll adjourn to closed session. Thank you. I think we'll go get back to order. Sorry for the delay. So I call us out of closed session at 7:44 p.m. and pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.1, the report on the closed session is that late this afternoon, we received a note of resignation from Director Brett Lear, and we are sorry that he has made the decision to resign. The Commission and the Sonoma County Library System is very grateful for all his hard work for the library system and the great service that he has provided. Among other things, work that he did to accomplish the strategic plan, the passage of Measure Y with the help of the staff of Sonoma County and the community, and especially today, of course, the opening on Mondays that we've all been eagerly waiting for. The library is in a great position, and we will all move forward together. The Commission did talk about plans for interim director and a search for a new director. So we will be discussing that further. Are there any comments from the public on items not on the agenda? We're doing it again. Seeing nobody come forward, then we will go. Item number 6 on the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. Announcements. I promised a spot for announcements. So are there announcements?
The Sonoma County Library Foundation has invited all the commissioners to this Sunday to their donor appreciation event that will be held at the Central Library from 2 until 4 this Sunday, May 7th. And I could not send that out to the commissioners, but I can announce it here. In addition, on June 10th, Copperfields will be doing a fundraiser for the Sonoma County Library Foundation, having Frederick Backman, the author of A Man Called Ove, and My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry. That author will be at Copperfields June 10th from 8 to 9:30. I believe there's a $60 charge, and $50 of it is going to the Sonoma County Library Foundation.
It'll be at the library.
Oh, it'll be at the library? Thank you for the correction, Keo, but it's put on by Copperfields.
And the foundation.
From the foundation. It's a joint program. Thank you so much. And we'll make sure that gets into the minutes. I'll forward it. And we'll forward it into the minutes. Thank you.
All right, agenda item number 6 is an opportunity for library advisory boards and friends reports, and seeing none coming forward, we'll move on to commission and liaison reports. So we'll start with commissioner reports. Commissioner Reese Foxen, would you like to start?
Well, I participated, I think I mentioned every 15 minutes last time, and I participated in the second day, which is the memorial service for those that were hurt and killed in the accident that they put on. Worked with students and teachers. Really quite emotional. Anyway, also met with Brett, Ken, and Jaylene and our city manager, Paul Kaler, to discuss the lease with the Cloverdale Library. And it went very well. Everybody was amenable. Fortunately, Paul had found a lease agreement. It was dated 1987, but it was very explicit into who did what, and it basically divided it. They take care of the outside, we take care of the inside. That's pretty general, but and they were fine with continuing that arrangement. And of course, everybody's pleased with Refresh. Attended Cloverdale Conversation, Angelina, and I've gotten a lot of compliments on the way she conducted the conversation. It was a very rainy night. We didn't have quite the turnout we had hoped, but everybody would have had to have swum to the library to get there. As it was, we paddled. And I went to the Brown Act training that Linda, that lady, put on. And it was very good. It was a really nice way to get a refresher in a different way than sitting down and doing it online. So that was fun. Attended a lab meeting and continued the conversation on what they could do from an advocacy standpoint for the libraries and ways that they could reach out into the community. Went to both Santa Rosa and Windsor Earth Days. And I also, as commissioner, attended a health action group that is forming in Cloverdale, trying to create the bridges and the connections so that all the different entities and segments of the community get together around health and around functioning as a community and working together to build and make it stronger. So those are the kinds of things. There's going to be another meeting this month. I was going to say next month, but this month. I won't be able to attend, but I believe Stephanie, the branch manager in Cloverdale, will be going. So I'm hoping she will. Anyway, that's it.
The Windsor Lab meeting was Tuesday, April the 5th, the day after the last commission meeting. Windsor had their Earth Day celebration Sunday a week ago, where there was a big fair with lots of booze, and it was the start of the farmers market. The library branch had a table there with a tent, and we talked to people and handed out stuff to get people excited about the library, and we told them about being open on Mondays. Our community conversation meeting is this Wednesday night. That's all.
No report.
We had a fantastic opening day in Roanoke Park, and we had a table with goodies and balloons, and we were raffling off an iPad mini, and a lot of excitement. We had people come in that had heard about it on the radio, people had read about it in the paper, and then people had no idea. They just were returning their books. And so anyway, it was a really good energy, and I haven't had a chance to do my Facebook posting about it, but it was really, I would like to point out, it was a cooperative event. It was put on by the lab, but we had a Friends member participate, a library volunteer member participate, and so it really felt like a spectrum of volunteers. It was very good. Secondly, I attended the Brown Act training with a lot of the other commissioners here on the 18th of April. It was very helpful. On the same day, I attended the Friends of the Library meeting as an ex officio board member. I would say there's a lot of concern at the Friends level about what they're supposed to be spending their money on going forward, and I'll address that a little bit later. The lab, we're still down one member. The lab was excited about putting out on this outreach effort for today, and so we really threw that together really quickly, but it came off really well. Next, I attended a meeting at Rohnert Park City Hall, including the director, the CFO, and Jaylene was there, and I was there, and I would characterize it as a preliminary discussion on the lease. I received a call over the weekend from KRCB Radio and wanted a quote about the opening and how excited we were, so I did that. I emailed our city council. I have not had a chance to make a public appearance before council because I wanted to wait until the budget was in place. But I did email them and also the city manager and assistant city manager and let them know about the hours, about the community conversation date, and also about the new facility in Rohnert Park, which is very exciting. This Wednesday, I'll be attending the Chamber of Commerce Noontimes again, and also that same day at night, the city of Rohnert Park is having a town hall. I'm going to go to both of those with materials about the Monday opening and make a big plug for the library. And lastly, we have had for the last 10 years, every 6 months, an art show and a photography show put on totally by volunteers who are on an art committee. It's held at the library. It's brought hundreds of people into our library. And so we're going to have a reception down at City Hall on May 23rd. Invite everybody to that. And after our reception, the art committee will be honored with a proclamation by the city council. Thanks very much.
Let's go down to this other end. Paul Heavenridge, do you have a report?
Guerneville Lab did not meet, but will. We're kind of reorganizing there, so that'll be coming up next month, I believe. And I also want to mention the Petaluma Butter and Eggs Parade. Our own Petaluma branch manager, Joe Cochran, was part of the cow chip throwing contest. Cow chip. What did I say?
Yeah. Okay.
Cow chip.
Right.
I say cow pie, but I'm from Michigan, so. But anyway, cow chip, and he was part of the luminaries that threw, and he did pretty well for his first year. I've promised, and I shouldn't say this since I'm part of the event, the coordination of it, but we will practice. We're going to go out in a cow field somewhere, and we'll practice for next year. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. And they also, the library had a part of the parade. They had a float, and Joe ran around. He had his cape from Lumicon, and he had his bike, and he was going up and down. Anyway, so I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to the staff for all the hard work on opening on Mondays. Today, I walked through the front door of the Central Branch, and it was a wonderful experience. So thank you very much.
Again, thank you for the opening. I walked through the front door of Petaluma. There was a line and somebody serving cookies, Vicki. And it was really interesting. One person walked in and said, "Oh, cookies. Oh." And Vicki said, "Oh, because we're open on Monday." "Oh, yeah." It was like she just tries to come to the library whenever she can, so she didn't quite realize that. We had a lab meeting last week. We are bringing in 2 teen volunteers this time, partly because the people who tend to be volunteers are really overextended, and so they can share the job and come to the lab meetings, although both of them are on the honors band, and we've heard the director doesn't let them out very often. I attended the Friends meeting, and at both meetings I announced and asked if there was somebody interested in the Measure Y committee, oversight committee, and I have somebody in the wings that I need to talk with them more about that. I did attend the Friends meeting, and I was very pleased that there was a presentation regarding different ways that now we can get help from the Friends, now that some of the things that they've been doing in the past are being taken over by Measure Y funds. That was quite impressive. I'd also like to take a minute to thank the fellow commissioners. I know that we all worked hard for Measure Y also, including putting it on the ballot. So I think it's a day for us to be pleased with what we've done also. Thank you.
I would like to add my appreciation for being open on Mondays. In addition, I'm working with a group to have a permanent library in Roseland, and I'd like to publicly thank Paul Heavenridge, who went into Santa Rosa in the evening to go to a meeting for me because I was not in the area. But there are people who are working on raising millions of dollars to make sure we have our own Roseland building. And thank you, Paul, for doing that. So and I will be going to the community conversations for Northwest and Roseland the May 12th and 13th. Thank you.
I attended the meeting with Brett Kennan, the Sebastopol City Manager, Larry McLaughlin, about the lease with the City of Sebastopol, and that was a very good meeting. I think some partnerships may be made going forward to around the library building. I spoke to the Sebastopol City Council and found that it was an unusually gratifying meeting with lots of people from the community talking about the different organizations and events that they're involved in. So I was delighted to be part of that meeting. Coincidentally, I attended the Brown Act training and found it enlightening about the new changes in the Brown Act, and it was also a good refresher. I attended the Lantern meeting, and Lantern is the nonprofit that is trying to raise money to build an improved Sebastopol library branch. So they work with the city and the library administration, and we'll be probably making another presentation to the commission in the not too distant future. And I wanted to especially call out the lovely artwork on the Sebastopol Library branch that really draws people into it, and they actually notice that we have a library in the corner instead of a block, dark block. So, and then I wanted to announce that the Sebastopol Friends are having their annual meeting on May 20th. And that should be a very enjoyable event. So, and that is all I have. And I think that, again, I do also want to, along with everybody else, tell staff how lovely it is to have the hours back on Monday. And I will no longer be one of those people that goes to the library door and goes, oh, right, it's not open. So we'll move on to reports. The Director's Evaluation Committee met this afternoon, and we have an interim chair of that meeting group. Do you have anything to report?
No, I think your announcement earlier about the director's resignation is sufficient.
All right. I want to skip to the Finance Committee last. So the Advocacy Committee, 7.2.3.
What is it? The State Constitutional Amendment 3 that we've been working on. We sent a letter out to the to the Finance and Governance Committee. The Elections and Constitution Committee is actually having a meeting tomorrow, and we had to submit a letter. I have it right here with copies for people. On behalf of Sonoma County Library, we are asking for your support of the Senate Constitutional Amendment number 3, authored by Senator Bill Dodd. This amendment would make it possible for a city county, city and county, or special district library to incur bonded indebtedness to fund construction, reconstruction, rehabilitation, or replacement of public library facilities. It also includes furnishings and equipment and the acquisition or leasing of real property for public library facilities. State Constitutional Amendment Number 3 will give our Joint Powers Agreement partners a mechanism to fund major repairs as well as a potential means to build a library in a much-ignored area of our county. The requirement of 55% rather than a supermajority voter approval eases constraints we will face on the ballot measure process. It will allow other libraries the same opportunities to repair, remodel older buildings, and build new or needed ones. We are very aware of the importance of the voting approval requirement. Recently, the voters in Sonoma County passed a sales tax measure that applied to the operating expenses of the library, enabling us to expand our service hours from 40 to a potential 66 hours per week, along with increasing adult literacy services and diversifying our programs and classes for children, teens, adults, and seniors. When we tried to pass the same measure in 2014, we missed the supermajority requirement by just 2 points, delaying important services to our communities. Libraries contribute on many levels to the community, its residents, and the state at large. They provide information and technology to adults who are maneuvering the complexities of our society, a foundation for literacy and educational endeavors, an economic return for the community as well as patrons, the underpinnings of critical thinking for our next generation. Most of all, libraries provide a safe place to gather or just be. Without the passage of this amendment, enabling a mechanism for library systems to gain funding, addressing critical deferred maintenance and growth issues, communities will lose vital contributions to its well-being. We thank you for your support of SCA 3 and for recognizing the public library as a valuable asset to the community. Sincerely, and I had Helena sign it. One of the things we're facing with doing some of these letters is time. I found out about this, I think, about the 15th of the month, which was after the commission meeting, and it was not possible to get it into the members of the committee in a timely manner without just doing it and getting Helena to sign it. So I'm hoping that nobody feels offended because we are not going to everybody and getting everybody's approval. And if you ever have any questions or comments, please let us know so that we can do it better. We have the federal budget issue coming up with the museum and library science funding, and we're beginning to have to contact senators, and I hope that each one of you will take a minute and write your senator or call your senator or email them because this is important. Now, I know they passed the budget today, and I think they basically included it in it, but we're going to go back in September and have the same battle, and it's still going to be up for grabs, so to speak. So I think people writing letters helps, and we certainly will put our letters in a timely manner. We're still, as a committee, working on how labs can do advocacy within the communities and hoping we can come up with some good ideas that will help support them and help, motivate them. And we know that handbook is in construction and policies and procedures are all in construction, but we hope in the process that as a committee we can add to some of this. There is no meeting in May because everybody's going to be crossing paths and going to be gone. So just so anybody who is planning on coming to our meeting, they'll not find us there. Anyway, and that's the advocacy committee for this month.
Thank you very much, Reese, and thank you for doing that letter so quickly and getting it out. It's great that the advocacy committee is keeping track of these legislative actions and keeping us informed of them. Thanks.
Thank you.
So to the foundation liaison report.
The foundation will meet again in 2 weeks. And right now they're concentrating on their Sunday event, honoring their donors, as well as the one that I mentioned in June at the library, Central Library. Thank you.
The ad hoc OPEB retirement. Do you want to make a comment on that? I know Ken's been working on this and has found members.
Yes, we've contacted everybody that we got names from the auditor and things about. Every one of them seemed interested, so we'll have to talk about it at the next Finance Committee meeting to see how we want to move forward. But there was, I think I contacted 5 of them, so and they are all interested. So.
Yeah, and thank you very much for doing that. So then the ad hoc standard operating procedures, we had somebody take minutes. We met recently.
We met, the 3 of us, and Helena had this wonderful outline of possible things to include in some kind of standard operating procedures for the commission. We divided up the categories, and we were supposed to get back to each other with whatever product or non-product we have by May 15th.
Great, thank you. So then to the Finance Committee report 7.2.2.
Thank you. The Finance Committee met April 17th in the library conference room. All commissioner committee members, the director, and the CFO were there. We had 1 member of the public, Don Schwartz, the assistant city manager of Rohnert Park, and he attended as a member of the public and did comment. We reviewed the monthly reports. We received an update on negotiations for the additional space in Rohnert Park, and that's on the agenda for tonight, so I won't go into that. We were told that the expectation that the move in there can possibly, hopefully, begin in August, and operations begin there in September, so that would be great. Under the topic of line item expenditures, liability insurance, it was confirmed that the library has a current directors and officers policy. That was in answer to a question that I asked. It was noted that $60,000 plus will be paid to the organization RGS for their work on the recruitment and hiring of additional staff. There were no upcoming budget adjustments to discuss. Work on the start of the OPEB ad hoc committee continues with contacts to be made with potential members very soon, and Ken has addressed that. He's done all the contacting, so that's great. The protocols have been developed, as I reported last month. Then we had a very long and detailed discussion of the budget. Some recommendations from the Finance Committee include, and I hope I have these all, I was taking notes. Again, running the meeting and taking notes is difficult. We also had Jane sit in for the first time, and she sent me about 5 pages of single-spaced notes. So this is my best shot at consolidating what we are recommending tonight. Number 1, that we start the budget process earlier in the year next year. Number 2, that we have a much fuller discussion of the budget tonight at the May Commission meeting, particularly because the budget workshop was not long enough for discussion. The 3 hours were taken up by presentation and some questions. It was all very good, but there needed to be more time for actual discussion. So we also acknowledge the fact this is an exceptional budget going from $18 million to $30 million, and there's just a lot in it, and it just needed more discussion. Thirdly, we need a special meeting to pass the budget. After we had this conversation, I checked. I believe this is accurate. We do need to pass at least a preliminary budget by May 31st, and I know the staff is anxious to get the whole budget in place. Tonight's meeting should be for discussion and to make sure all the commissioners have their questions answered. So that's the hope of what the Finance Committee was recommending. There's more. Job descriptions for all new positions need to be supplied to the full commission. New positions need commission approval. We did over the weekend get from Suzanne some detailed job descriptions, and Suzanne was out of town and on her own time. I don't know that we have all the job descriptions, but I'm sure we've reviewed the ones that we received, and we can address that later maybe. Next, we need a plan for adding additional hours, taking into account the community conversations and budget monies. 6, the Commission should receive a quarterly report regarding hours, programs, and collections with the new Y money. 7th, we consider fully funding at least the ARC, the annual contribution for OPEB, and a new report will be coming soon. We have to commission an outside report to develop what that number is. So that's going to be happening soon. Eighth, we allocate $20,000 for a management consultant to assist the commission on developing its priorities, roles and responsibilities, protocols, working with the director's review possibly. That will help us, among other things, with future budget discussions. And there is a line item in the budget for consulting fees. So this can be just a portion of the allocation that's already in the budget, but specified for working with us as a commission to clarify, again, our roles, responsibilities, and priorities particularly, and working with the director's review. Ninth, we agendized the item that was cited by Don Schwartz when he came and made his presentation before the Finance Committee. Per the JPA, Section C, Facilities, item number 2, and I'm going to just quote the beginning of this. The library and members who own library facilities shall work together to plan for the provision and payment of capital improvements and capital repairs to facilities operated by the library. And we had our attorney with us. Tom is an attorney, and Tom said something like that. It's mentioned in good faith in a contract. We need to at least agendize this and have a discussion. So that's what the Finance Committee is recommending, that we agendize this and have a discussion. Lastly, we received a report on the cost of the Cloverdale refresh, which was $350,000, and $50,000 of that was contributed by the Cloverdale Friends of the Library, which was a fantastic contribution, and thank you to the Friends of Cloverdale Friends of the Library. The next Finance Committee meeting will be held Monday, May 15th at 3 o'clock in the conference room. I will be on vacation, and Vice Chair Randall Neff will chair the meeting. Thank you very much.
What was the last one? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
The Finance Committee meeting.
Finance Committee meeting, thank you.
Yeah, Finance Committee meeting. The next one is May 15th, regular. It's always the third Monday of every month, unless we have to change it because of holidays. And it's always at 3 o'clock unless we have to change it for something. But basically, that's when it is, third Monday at 3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. It's a very complete report. So moving on to, I don't believe there's correspondence and press coverage. So that's item 8. Moving on to the consent calendar, item 9. We have 2 items on the consent calendar. 9.1, budget workshop and regular meeting minutes of April 4th, 2017, and item 9.2, statement of inclusivity. So are there any commission members or members of the public that request any items be removed and have it placed in action items? If not, then these items are approved by our general consent. So that takes us to discussion items number 10. And we have the director's report, but since the director's not here, I'm assuming nobody is prepared to give that report. We can go on to 10.2, the management report, and ask questions about the written document. Okay, let's do that. Is there any item on the management report that management would like to call out and to have the commission take special notice of? Vicki?
This is pretty exciting news. Am I on? Turn me on, please. Not on.
No, it's not.
Not.
There it goes.
There we go. Okay, so exciting news for us. Some grants for me in particular. We wrote a grant to join the CENIC network, which is the California Education Information Network. This is the high-speed network that's available to schools and public libraries and universities around the state. And we had applied for a grant before I got here, and the big the big holdback for us was having to pay the first year costs up front. Some of you were on the commission when that was up for discussion. Anyway, so I wrote the grant, and we received a $90,000 grant to pay the upfront costs to put us on the California Education Information Network Consortium. So that's a 10 gig internet connection for the library and for all the libraries. And so that's one thing. It was $90,000. It'll also pay for rewiring when we do the refresh of the Northwest Library to rewire Ethernet for the whole thing. And it'll also buy the library a redundant, a second firewall so that we have failover, because that's a key piece in the infrastructure. If that fails, everything kind of goes to heck in a handbasket. So and that firewall itself is about $30,000. So that's really, number one, really exciting. That happened a week and a half ago. And then just today, we received word that we, for the Roanoke Park branch and for the Healdsburg branch, we applied for virtual reality setup. So what that means is virtual reality, like the headset and the computer that goes along with that, and several education programs that are available. This amounts to about a $10,000 grant for the libraries, and we've chosen Roanoke Park and Healdsburg to do those in, because first of all, we have a heavy Spanish-speaking population in Healdsburg, so we'd like to try some of the virtual reality programming that was there, that is available, educational programming. And then we have a wonderful children's librarian in Roanoke Park, Sandra Breedlove, who will be, and also Kathy and Katie Drewski, that are really excited about that. And so that was the other thing. And I want to compliment Kathy DeWeese, because she helped clean up my writing and editing, and came up with some other programs that we could use to obtain the grant. So it's like a double win, 2 in a month. So just so you know, we're hitting it hard. And then Kathy D., come down here. You got to come down here, because she also is, she and Angelina both are working on some other projects.
We just heard today that we were chosen as an LSTA grant, another award. This is a project that I don't think we've reported out to you guys about yet, but this is the same grant that we won the Healthy Living for last year. We put together a grant proposal for something called Together at the Table, which is a civics engagement program where we're hoping that we have up to 6 topics that we would select, build a curriculum around it, and then host kind of community conversation spaces and events around topics like immigration and LGBTQ, and difficult topics that people might not sit down and talk to your neighbors about, and just kind of and then part of that also, which is I think is exciting, is giving people an opportunity to, once they have determined what their opinion is about a topic, giving them an avenue to actually write to their elected officials. We're going to have postcards right there with addresses that they can write, and we'll mail them for them. So it's kind of an exciting way to get the community talking and involved. So when we just learned that we got that grant too.
And how big is that grant, Kathy?
We asked for $50,000 and we got $25,000. So we're going to scale it down a little bit from our initial what we asked for, but
congratulations.
But we're
and that'll be in
that.
every branch.
Yes, there will be an iteration. We had originally talked about 6 topics that we would then host, but with the lesser grant amount, we were talking about now, do we scale it to say 4 topics, or do we have 6 topics but at fewer locations, or we're talking about how to scale it. But yes, there will be something at every branch.
So is that something like that friends groups could contribute money to that project to get it back up to where you want it? Is that a possibility?
We're still. We just heard this week, and so we still have to actually do the final paperwork and about what it's going to look like now that we have that grant amount. But that's very interesting. I like it.
Okay, well, it's very.
I hear you.
Yes, they are.
I had a question
congratulations.
about the 90,000. What granting body did you go through for that grant?
We went through the state library, and the state library, this is Library Services and Technology Act funds that are funneled through the California State Library, and the managing organization for this is a group called the Khalifa Group, and so, but the funds they're federal funds that are funneled through the state. The California State Library. It's very exciting because everything that we've just done to the network, this will just take all the work that our team has done and really just take it up a notch. And everything is pretty well in place for us to start very soon. They think that we can actually be live on that network before school starts up in the fall, and maybe even sooner.
That sounds great, and it sounds like our library system is catching up technology-wise.
You got it.
Good.
Vicki, I had a quick question on the virtual reality programs, which I don't really understand how that works. And I just wondered if there's a way possibly in the, after it's all set up, if commissioners can come and see.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll happily. What we'll probably be doing initially is setting it up in Central, in IT services, and get it up and operational. And then we'll be doing some training together with the staff members at both Rohnert Park and Healdsburg. So, once it's up and operational, we're just so excited about it because one of the things that Kathy DeWeese found in terms of educational programs with virtual reality is it was teen driver education. What happens when you're texting and driving? And this is a virtual reality program so you can see things like that. And we know, in talking with Katie Drewski and Sandra Breedlove, we know that teens are wildly interested in this.
Sounds terrific. Thank you so much, and congratulations to all of us, I guess, but for your success.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
One of them is to the director, and since he's not here, I will just ask. I notice on page 15 that there's beginning to be an investigation of the Sonoma County Library's records retention policies, which I think is significant and important. My question is that do we currently have a policy in place, or are you creating a policy? And if you are creating a policy, is it one that needs to be approved by the Commission?
Well, every organization should have a records retention policy if they are a government or quasi-government agency. So as near as I can tell, ours is pretty helter-skelter. And Brett has asked me to begin working on that. And as we have been receiving communications we do have backup and retrieval both on-premise and in the cloud. So we have the mechanisms in place. In terms of a written policy, I haven't seen one, and so I think that would be on me over the next year to get that in place, so that we write down what it is we're doing and how we're doing it, because we do have mechanisms in place, such as we're running nightly backups, we have weekly backups. All of that is then backed up to the Amazon cloud, so that if we have an earthquake and also we take tapes off-site. So we're doing the standard kinds of things, but there isn't really anything in black and white. So you're right, we need to do that. And then I think one thing that we do need to address with the Commission is this whole business of what's going on right now with, the recent state Supreme Court case in San Jose, which, has to do with folks using their personal devices on company, with company business. And since it's a public organization, there are all kinds of implications. So, one of the things that Brett has spoken with me about is, what shall we do about that? And one of the things that I'm recommending is that we probably should look at company cell phones for senior management, branch managers, and the like, so that those devices belong to the organization. And if there is a subpoena, you know, you have to give that device up. None of us would be very happy if we had to turn over our personal iPhones, I think. And so I have been in communication with AT&T and Verizon and Sprint trying to get some pricing. Both AT&T and Sprint will give us free phones. And then, you know, we'll have a monthly charge for the number of phones and the kind of plans. And they're pretty reasonable. I've worked in other organizations where we've done that. And I also think that one of the things, I think Helena has asked me about this, we use a process with Linux called aliasing, which is why you get your email in your personal mail. Well, that's kind of all part and parcel of the same ball of wax, if you will. And so if we're really going to adhere to some standards about that, we're going to have to stop the aliasing, and, you know, we'll have to set you up with a Sonoma County Library email address, and you should use that when you're dealing with the public business like this. And, you know, I've had a couple of conversations with Linda, our county council, and she says they haven't come up with anything different than that at the county. And I've also talked with the CIO of the city of Santa Rosa and Eric McHenry, and both say the same thing. We're looking at this idea of company cell phones for senior staff, and, you know, in our case, that would be the branch managers as well. And then, you know, basically refusing to allow people to have their personal email on personal devices. So I think that's something that you all need to address with me, and I think it's something that we should address sooner rather than later, so that we don't end up on Fox News or something. I hate Fox, but anyway, you know, NBC, Nightly News, or any of the other television networks.
So, Vicki,
yes.
So, and I think Tim is right about the policies on the records retention. In the back of my mind, I think there was something, but probably not as extensive as we need.
Right.
So you're going to spend some months trying to pull all those together?
I'm going to try to find what we have. I think it's on me to look at what is written down and sift through it. I've just been so busy trying to keep the boat afloat that I'm sorry to all of you that I haven't done that. But
no, it's just I just think that it's something the commission would like to see at some point when
absolutely.
You have had an opportunity to get to that, and it's been this long. So.
Right. Well, I know, but it's important, Helena.
Yes, it is. It's very important, but I didn't want you to feel like it had to be next week. And then on the possible cell phones as a way of dealing with the email issue.
Right.
So that's probably something, you're right, the commission should have a discussion about how best to handle that.
Right. And I think what I should do is just come up with the pricing from all three vendors and look at the coverage maps, and then if you decide that's what we should do. And that's the recommendation that I'm making, because I think that in just the little bit of research that I've done in talking with our county council and talking with the CTO for the county and for the city, you know, they're all going down that road because they're concerned about their staff and how it might, and of course their problem is much, much larger than ours, because look at all the county employees. You know, Linda pointed that out.
Right.
You know, that's a big dollar figure. With us, it won't be such a big dollar figure, but it's still a decent dollar figure, I think. And I think it's something that for the protection of our staff and for the organization, it's you know, and when I queried about what other things they were talking about, you know, that was the first thing everyone has come up with, because if there is a subpoena, you have to turn over the device, and nobody's going to I know I wouldn't like to give somebody my cell phone, and I certainly, I have email and texts on my phone that are about company business.
Yeah. And Barbara has a question.
Well, along those lines, as commissioners, we of course use our personal devices. Are you expanding it out to that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Okay. Without a doubt that each one of you would have a library system cell phone, and if you're dealing with library system business, you should use that device. And I think after we attended the Brown Act training, I think it was made pretty darn clear that we need to have that real separation. And I don't know another way to do it. In the old days, you used to be able to have 2 lines, but it's still on the same device. And so, the information lives there, and so we can't do it that way. I'm not happy about carrying 2 phones, but if it's what we need to do, I think it's really, we're heading down that road.
Well, I think your point about giving them up, it would be awful.
Well, it would be awful. For me, it's my only telephone. So, there you have it.
Yeah, there's that. Does anybody else, Reese?
Well, how will they work the computers? Because, we don't have offices. We don't come into work, do our work on the computers. We do our work on our computers at home. So they're subject to the same confiscation, aren't they?
Well, I think, yes, there is that. And we're going to need to look at this all the way around, I think. Okay. I think it's something that, we're going to have to really take a long, hard look and figure out how we're going to move forward with it. But yes, if you're doing email on your personal computer at home and you're sending and receiving it, there's an image there, right? So
maybe we can incorporate thumb drives in our actual document work at home.
Still goes through the computer, though.
Let's leave this for...
Yes, exactly. So are there any other questions about the management report? Any other comments? Any other...
I would just like to thank you for the training document, to understand what's going on. That was really wonderful to see. I like knowing.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Yes, and congratulations, too, on the massive hiring and training that has occurred recently. It was a huge undertaking, and I know a lot of people were involved, and it was a ton of work, and kudos to all of you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, unless somebody has another comment, we'll go to item, where am I? 10.2.1.1. Is that right? Monthly activities. Did you want to talk about the health care benefits? The update on employee health care benefits, Suzanne?
Do you want me to get up? I don't. Is it okay if I sit because my legs are sore? Thank you.
Yes.
We have made little progress with the SEIU. We will be having a meet and confer this Thursday, but at this time we are going to have a continuance of the benefits that have been provided. So we're not really having a true open enrollment, but we will be providing benefits for all of the employees, basically continuing what they have at this time. So that as of June 1st, everybody will still have coverage, and they will be going into Kaiser. There will be just a few remaining employees in the Sonoma the Sonoma County Health Plan. So we've worked it out with renewals with VSP, which is a Vision Service Plan, and Delta Dental, and so. But we will be meeting with the SEIU this Thursday, so that's moving forward.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Good to hear. And now we have are there questions about that? No. Okay. Moving on to 10.2.1.2, update on community conversations regarding service hours. Angelina Cassiopo. I can say it. Cassiopo.
There you go, Cassiopo. That's right. Hi, all. I'm just giving a brief update on the community conversations that we've been hosting in our branches. As to date, we've had 5, 7 more to go. So I want to thank you all who have attended in our different communities. We've also had surveys available in the library branches, so I've been getting them by the envelope full. People filling those out in their libraries, and then we also have an online survey as well. So we've gotten, at this point, a few hundred responses, which has all been very positive. The discussions that we've had at the community conversations have been very positive as well. I want to have a big shout out to our labs and our friends who have attended and spread the word. They've been kind of instrumental in supporting having those conversations with the public. Are there any specific questions about the community conversations?
Is it too early to notice trends?
There are a few trends, so I pulled up 3. It is kind of early because it could be significantly changed depending on how many additional surveys we receive. But the top 3 kind of needs, which have been, which have come out, is weekday evenings. So 6 to 8 has been kind of the number 1. Sunday afternoons between noon and 3, and Saturday evenings. So really just expanding Saturdays to be open till 6. Those are kind of the top 3 that we've been hearing. And that's reflected also with the community conversations, so in-person discussions, the paper surveys, and online surveys at this time.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's good to hear.
All right. Thank you.
And now to the monthly financial report, 10.2.2.
Yeah, hi, the report starts on page 26. Barbara kind of went over it already, but you'll see that down below in the expenditure line items, about halfway down the page, on page 26, there are 4 items there listed. Wanted to point out the consulting services. That was a timing factor. The actual is higher than the budget due to negotiations and the facilities master plan taking longer than expected. Both of those things were budgeted last year to end at the end of the year, and neither one of them did. So that's why those are higher. The other contract services includes the RGS that we talked about, and it's also listed down there as a payment over $25,000 this month. They were indispensable in getting all the people hired that were listed back a few pages, and they were just a huge help in making that happen and making today happen at the same time. So, any questions?
Yes. Page 29. Communication expenses. We've almost gone over 100%. What are those exactly?
Yeah, we missed the budget on that one for sure. It's offset a little bit by, I don't know, the telecommunications data line, which is on the next page, 51901. So one is the voice lines and one is the data lines. And between the 2 line items, they work out pretty well, but we didn't get the split right in the budgeting process.
Okay. Way over. I think you've explained the other ones.
Have one. I'm sure you've explained this to me before. On page 30, 51916, county services charges.
Oh, yeah, that's the service charges that we get charged for using the county accounting system.
The accounting system. Okay, yep. Thank you.
Has the April tax payment shown up?
What is today?
It's not on the form, but
no, this is through March. I'm sure it's there. To tell you the truth, I haven't had a chance to run a report to look.
Okay.
Seeing no other questions, thank you very much. All right, action items by motion. So This is the budget for 2017-2018. And I want to reiterate what Barbara said, is we really want to have an opportunity for commissioners to make sure all their questions are answered. And because what we have heard from in the past is that people wanted more of a discussion. And so I would like to hear from each commissioner as to your thoughts on the budget as presented.
Should you read the motion?
Oh, do we need to do the motion first? Or are we going to?
Well, I thought we were going to maybe pass it was recommended that we have a special meeting to pass the budget.
Right.
So we don't have a
So
budget.
we would have a motion that recommends we have a special meeting?
Well, okay, I'm trying to think of the protocols for how you do a motion that you...
We could have a motion that we would have a special meeting to review the budget summary, job descriptions. So I will put a motion out there and see if there's a second. A discussion item.
But we are making a motion to have the discussion tonight and have a special meeting to hopefully approve the budget before May 31st. You probably would like that.
Actually, staff, I think I can speak for everyone, would really appreciate the budget being adopted tonight if at all possible. We've provided all the information that you asked for at the last meeting, and we're here to answer questions now.
I appreciate all that's been done by the staff. I so move.
Okay.
I so move that this become a discussion item and we have a special meeting to vote on it. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So that is a motion by Linda Garcia, Commissioner Garcia, and a second by Randall Neff to have a discussion of the budget and to schedule a special meeting in 2 weeks from today to vote on it. So that's the motion on the table. Yeah. Sure.
I would like to ask Ken what the staff feels that you would like it passed tonight. Is any reason for that? Any deadlines that we need to make?
Well, I
if
think
we put it off for 2 weeks.
I mean, it's totally up to you, but as far, like I said, I think I can speak for most of the staff that's here, and we feel this is a solid budget. It's the first year in a 10-year plan. It includes numerous positions that we need to have, or else we'll implode. And with the last budget workshop, we were asked to provide some information, all of which we've provided here. So I'm not sure what else.
Okay. Well, I guess my one question is for the positions that we were presented that those were needed, and we didn't get the job descriptions till Saturday. So we didn't really have a chance to go over those. So
okay.
I think that's a sticking point right here, and I think that's one of the things that we want to discuss because it's a big part of the budget is those new positions. So I think that's the issue, and I want to make sure my question is clear. Is there some deadlines that we would be missing if we didn't pass the budget tonight?
Not deadlines. It would just help us move forward. Something as a guideline to move forward into next year. We have to get the budget into the county, into the system in order to even start paying bills or payroll July 1st as soon as possible.
So if we did have a special meeting, being what you say, and we understand that the staff has really worked hard on this, if we had a special meeting, I think we owe it to the staff to have it sooner than later. So we have another week to review this, but try to do it within a week if we're going to do this to help the staff out, and not put it off for a couple, 2-3 weeks. Is that okay? That's what I have to say.
I think that we talked about having a special meeting 2 weeks from today, which would be the 15th, a Monday. So I appreciate the effort that has been done to do the position job descriptions. I haven't had a chance to look at them completely closely, and I also think that they need to be available for the public to see. So those are two things. I think this is public money that we're using, so I think when we approve a position, it should be something the public has an opportunity to see too, if we're seeing it. So I saw David Ebright's hand and then Linda's.
I am aware that a number of commissioners will be away sometime during the month of May, so I just wanted to make sure that there was a quorum available to pass a budget on the proposed date.
It looks like to me that there will be 3 commissioners, although we don't know what Commissioner Grill's schedule is and when he'll be back from his trip. So that would be 4 absent out of 11. So I think that we would have a quorum.
My thinking is that I might be ready to approve the budget tonight if I have my questions answered appropriately. So I think that I, at this point, would be voting against that motion.
Voting against the motion? Okay.
I'm not voting yet, but I would rather wait till after I've had a chance to ask my questions, see if I feel satisfied with the questions, and then move whether we're going to wait 2 weeks or not. That's my personal opinion.
The other thing is, could we approve a budget without the $1 million of new positions and discuss the positions on the 15th? Would be something to consider. And I've also heard people say that not to do all the $1 million in positions all at once. So that would be something to consider. That's all.
With the director's resignation, one of the things that passed through my mind is whether we should be hiring a chief operations officer, I guess it is, which is kind of an assistant director, without a director there. I don't know, it's just something that passed through my mind. I don't know one way or the other. So that's just something I want to bring forward in terms of these new positions. I don't know.
You might want to help pick it, whoever that is.
Well, should we allow the director to pick his own assistant? I don't know.
I think, can I speak to that real quick? I think that this resignation of the director may show you that it's all the more critical that you might need a chief operating officer here, because who can take over the helm right now? Nobody. I mean, this is a really critical point in time, and I don't know. I'm sure we could step up to the plate, but had we had somebody that was a chief operating officer, they may be able to assist us in this time right now. So there's a lot more that I'd like to speak to if I could have an opportunity.
Let me just, certainly we will absolutely come back to you. But I think Reese had a question.
Mm-hmm. I didn't have a question, I had a statement. First of all, we're not hiring the chief operation officer tonight. We're just approving his position. So, and I want everybody to know that I have been very satisfied between what you gave on the initial presentation, where each of you came up and told us about the different positions, and the papers that were sent over. I'm very satisfied with what you have given us, and I just want to know that you to know that that's how I'll be voting.
Hang on just a second. I thought I saw somebody. Randall, did you have a comment to make? Okay.
Okay. I think that I've been satisfied with what the staff has put together, and I'd be willing to stay here to midnight if it's only the discussion of the positions and get it passed tonight. I would vote for that. And I think Tim kind of alluded to that himself. instead of coming back again in a couple weeks with half the commission gone and trying to pass this. I don't see what we're going to learn in 2 more weeks, since, you know, if it's just the positions, if that's what's holding this up.
I think there's some other issues that the Finance Committee had brought up as things that should be considered in this budget. So I wonder if Barbara wanted to speak to those again.
Well, one of the things I just want to make sure that everybody realizes when we're talking about hours, that we're talking about going from 40 to 52, which we're doing this week, and that there's no more money in the budget, and I confirmed this with an email with Brett on Friday, to go to any more hours. I mean, there might be a possibility of adding an hour or 2, I guess, he said, depending on Keogh's report and working with the branch managers. But we're not talking about the potential, even, as it says in this letter, of 66 hours. We're not talking about that. And I just want to make sure everybody realizes that, because at an earlier meeting, we were talking about making changes in April and then possibly even more in July. And we know we can't do it in July because it's too crazy. But over the course of the year, we're not doing it either. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that. So we're going to have community conversations. We're going to listen to people. But in this budget, there's no money. And one of the recommendations that the Finance Committee came up with was asking for a quarterly report, which I personally think is a really good idea. All these new programs and, all this new stuff's going on. But there isn't the flexibility or the potential in this budget to add any more hours. So it isn't like we're going to step up to 52 and 6 months down the road we can step up to 60. I mean, that isn't going to happen in this budget. And I'm just making a statement, and I believe with all accuracy that this is true, and I just want everybody to understand that. That's one thing. Secondly, I personally am in a very interesting position. I am the appointee of Rohnert Park, and Rohnert Park is, of course, a JPM member like all of you are. The assistant city manager for the city of Rohnert Park coincidentally happens to be the former budget analyst for the county and worked for the county when the JPA was being developed. And because I was invited to be at the lease meeting, Don Schwartz and I have had a number of conversations and emails back and forth about the budget. And Don kept asking for more information, which I was providing him. And today, I received basically a final, totally draft form, but a lot of recommendations. And he has some serious concerns about us going into a deficit position using the budgeting that we're talking about. Now, Ken and I had a really good conversation today. This is not a matter of mistrusting staff or disrespecting staff, and an incredible amount of work that's gone into this. I am not a budget analyst, and I am not qualified to, I can make tweaks and I can make comments and I can make observations, but I am not a budget analyst. And I think one of the things that I kind of came out of this whole last few months of all this questioning and concern and so forth is that when the county kind of cut us loose by us being with this new JPA, we used to be under the county. And so my understanding, the library developed a budget and then they go to the county and they superficially or in depth, I don't know, but there were other eyes looking on the forecasting and the budgeting and stuff like that. And we don't have that anymore. And that is not a criticism of anybody whatsoever. It's just a statement. We 11 people on this commission are responsible for passing this budget. We have never, as I point out a few times, have even set our own priorities as a commission. Are our priorities to have hours, or our priorities to have programs, or our priorities to do this or that? And we don't have that. And a budget is a way of implementing policy. We can't implement policy if we don't have our priorities. So anyway, my personal concern right now is that I have this document from the City of Rohnert Park's Assistant City Manager and Budget Analyst with his concerns, and he suggested meeting with Ken and Brett, and that's when we thought we had Brett, just to talk about it and make sure his questions were answered. And I would feel much more confident if that happened, because he's a budget analyst and I'm not. Secondly, and we've made progress on the OPEB in the fact that we're creating this committee and it's going to happen. But if we don't put aside enough money, the OPEB ad hoc committee could make recommendations to us that we couldn't implement. And I don't feel comfortable enough, just me, but I don't feel comfortable enough to know that we have those dollars set aside to meet what the ad hoc committee might recommend. And on a smaller level, as we've talked about a little bit, the Friends contributions, there are a lot of disruption in the Friends groups, and they are, of course, major volunteers and people who have put, huge amounts of time and energy and so forth into loving our libraries and supporting our libraries with book sales and all that. And so this budget doesn't have a place for the Friends contribution, and I would like to see some sort of modification where it showed something like maybe the summer reading program or something real specific where it called on the Friends to make that contribution, because we need to link them in a little more closely. I don't know if you've heard from your Friends groups, but I certainly have heard from a few of them. I personally also feel that going full whole hog with this gigantic increase in programs, events, and collections, I don't know. It feels like it's moving too fast for me. I would feel much more comfortable phasing it in. And certainly back to the OPEB, I made a note here that we fund at least our full annual required contribution based on whatever this report's going to come out in June. Lastly, one of the recommendations that Don Schwartz made, which was that we have a 10-year budget projection report. And again, the staff is swamped and overwhelmed and all the stuff that is done. It really would be nice to have a document out there so maybe some of these, questions would be, obvious and would be, answered more. And maybe there's answers to this stuff, but we don't have those projections. I remember a long time ago when I wasn't on the commission and you guys that were on the old commission had this document, and you could, had these timelines and things crossing over. It wasn't really a full laid out, 10-year projection, but it had some stuff like that. And I just feel a little bit I feel a little bit in the dark about some things, and it's nobody's fault. It isn't that. It's the process, the way this has happened. And it's just an overwhelming thing. It's kind of almost like be careful what you wish for. I mean, we worked through 2 different campaigns to get this to happen. Once it happens, it has to happen really fast. And it's a gigantic amount of money. It's really, really serious. We are the responsible group. And I don't feel, without this long-term projection and this discussion on Don Schwartz's questions, that I can vote for in a budget. So sorry to go on, but that's my feeling.
Thanks, Barbara. Reese.
So basically what I hear you saying is that you trust this Don Schwartz more than you trust the people we have hired to do the job.
What I'm saying is I am appointee of the City of Rohnert Park. The City of Rohnert Park's budget analyst is telling me this. Do I just blow it off? It is not a matter of who do you trust whatsoever. It's, to me, I was trying to point out a separate set of eyes. We don't have a separate set of eyes anymore.
So the separate set of eyes is somebody who doesn't even have an involvement in our operation.
I have given him a lot of information. All this is public information. Mm-hmm. It's all public information.
So you trust him more than you trust the people we've hired?
No.
I just want to jump in here. I don't think that what Barbara's doing shows a lack of trust. I think it shows a desire to really be sure and understand it. And I think it's a little divisive, too, to accuse the commission of lack of trust. I think we're all here trying to do our best job for the library, and that we want to look at and understand all the information. So I would hope that we all keep this in mind, and I do have to say that Don Schwartz was the budget analyst for the County of Sonoma for many years, and at one point the library was his responsibility to work with the director to review the budget. So I don't think he was also part of the JPA assistant group from the county that supported the JPA review committee's work. So I don't think he's unfamiliar with the library. And I think that Barbara is not accusing our staff at all, but that it is a huge responsibility to have a big budget like we have, and we want to get it right the first time, and not end up not having money to do the things that we've promised the voters of Sonoma County that we'll do. One of the things that maybe Ken can explain a little bit is about the reserves. Now, I know he brought up a question about the reserves, and we do have two portions of the budget. One is primarily the property tax, and one is the anticipated funds from the Measure Y sales tax. So would it not be prudent to also have some reserves from the Measure Y sales tax money? Because we're using that money to support new staff and new programs. And I don't recall that we do have reserves from that part of the budget. Can you just enlighten us a little bit?
Well, when we formulated this budget, we went by the expenditure plan. We had it pretty detailed out what it was going to be for programs, extended services, to refresh the buildings, more books and materials, and that's what we used it for. Nowhere in the expenditure plan, we can't use the Measure Y money for OPEB.
Right. Well, can you use it, though, for the OPEB covering the new hires? Is there a portion?
There's very little. If you remember correctly, there's very little in the Tier 3 people that have been hired after November of 2013 that the OPEB, they don't receive much at all.
Okay, so I don't know how much, very little
so there is a small portion of it there, but the thing we're talking about, the OPEB liability for the majority of the people that have full coverage, none of the Measure Y money can be spent for that.
I completely understand that. In fact, that was pretty specific about the ballot measure. So I think Barbara's raised a point about the OPEB. I know we're going to have this review committee, which is going to be a great help to the commission and the library to determine what happens going forward and plan for it. But as a library commissioner, it does seem prudent to me that we don't just, we have had an increase in property tax revenue also. It would seem prudent to me to increase our OPEB additional payment kind of in correlation to the amount of additional money we get from the property tax, just in anticipation, because I can't imagine that they would tell us to pay less or to pay the same. I mean, I think that you've done forecasts for what will happen with OPEB if we go forward.
If the commission desires to put more money into the OPEB, you'll have to let us know that. We'll have to take money from somewhere else, though. It'll come out of other services.
Right, understood.
Yeah.
How about from the fund balance?
The fund balance is it's there. It can be used for that. That is, I think that was going to probably be one of the options that the OPEB committee would come up with. Quite frankly, we put in $150,000 because that's what we had been doing from year to year in anticipation of this OPEB committee analyzing, coming up with some recommendations, and then moving forward from there.
Okay, can I have a couple questions?
Okay, I just wanted to say there's also the money that's being paid back from the Measure Y money that we took out of this year's budget that can be used for OPEB, and that's $675,000. I forget if we've already allocated that for a zillion other activities, but that's a thought too. So go ahead, Tim.
Okay, I had a couple of questions that one of them's kind of surprisingly resolved, in that probably since it looks like we're going to be trying to finding a new director, I have some confusion about the COO and the director's roles, and I think that probably we will, as a commission, be needing to talk with staff and whoever, if we do a COO, about the job description for the director as we search for a new director. So that kind of has been put on a shelf for me. My questions are, one is, this is just maybe I just need confirmation. In the budget, we have staffing, and we have 15 additional FTEs for branch staffing. Is that in addition to those we've already hired?
Yes.
Okay, so that's significant for me. That's important, and that's basically to provide good, full coverage for the hours that we have.
Yes.
Okay, that was one question I had.
And they're detailed to the branches they go to and the departments they go to on page 37 of the packet.
Okay, so they will, but they are basically in addition to the 30-some people we've already hired.
Yes.
Okay, then, and the other question that I have, and I asked it last month, and Barbara has alluded to it. My impression is that in this budget, we are basically funding the support that the libraries need.
Right.
But we are not funding any additional hours.
Correct.
And so part of the Measure Y plan talks about even like Sunday hours. It's in the plan. So essentially my question is, if I can have an assurance or something from staff that says, we hope in the 18-19 budget to include or increase the number of hours so that we have it. I understand, I hope I understand, that basically you are providing us with this program to really give the people of the county the library services they deserve in terms of support and information and adult everything.
Tim, can I jump in here? Because I think what's important is planning. And one of the things we learned from our process for opening Mondays is that it takes a great deal of planning in order to execute. And to get here to where we got to today, it's really clear to me that if we don't have this underlying staff that's necessary, then we can't move to the next level. And everyone on our staff and on the executive leadership team has every intention of expanding hours out for more evenings during the week, for additional Saturday and Sunday hours. We are having Angelina out in the branches gathering information to help us inform that decision. And if you don't do a good planning cycle, then what happens is that we fail miserably, and none of us wants to do that. And so it's critical, as far as I'm concerned, that we get this underpinning staff in here so that when we do open additional evening hours during the week, additional hours on Saturday and on Sunday, that we have everything and everyone that we need to do the job in the very best way.
I'm not challenging that. I'm not challenging that at all.
But I've heard that, there's no money in this budget. That's right. There's not money in this budget for additional hours this year.
Okay, but my question is, if we're spending all of the money this year for funding these issues, where does the staff see the money will come. Now, I know that Ken has talked about the fact that technology is going to go down in the next budget. Perhaps maintenance, building refreshes might. But basically, the thing that I am trying to understand is that if I vote for this budget, and as I've said a couple of times publicly, it feels like we're going from a mom and pop organization to a small chain, and we need the management and the support. I understand that. Maybe Ken can answer this one. In the budget next year, I would hope that you're ready. Where in the budget that we're being presented now do you see new funding for an additional 6 hours coming from?
Well, there's $670,000, I think that's the number, out of the Measure Y funds that are being set aside to pay back the general fund for May and June. So right there, $670,000 that we have. And like I said, the $11.5 million is flexible within it. And we are spending a lot on IT the first year, and we're spending a lot on books and materials the first year, and we're spending a lot on facilities the first year. So those percentages can move up and down year to year, and I think...
Okay, so then what I'm saying, if I'm going to vote for this budget, I'm giving you a heads up for next year's budget, which I will be around for, I think. So I'm just saying, as you're planning the next year's budget, I am going to be looking really strongly for the increase in hours in that budget. I can accept where you are on this now, but I really do want to know where that's headed. Okay. So my heads up for the 18-19.
And I think we have a good process started to really inform us on what those hours should be, and so we can move forward with that next year.
I have I guess an HR question. So these positions, especially the ones that you had sent us, the job descriptions, when do you see hiring these people? I mean, obviously you're not going to hire them next month or at the start of the budget. So there may be some money savings there because this is going to take some time to get the right people.
Right. There was two questions that I wanted to respond to. First was the one you asked. I mean, we have just had an onslaught of people that are coming on board, and we're just getting through the orientations of them. So I would probably say that we would maybe start recruiting again for them in June. And so they would come, positions, we post them for about 21 days. So it would take a month or two to fill those positions, depending on, obviously how long if we have the qualified candidates and interviewing, if they have to relocate. So, and it depends on which position we're talking about here. Some of them are easier to fill than others. So that was the first thing that I wanted to respond to. Secondly is I think it may have been Barbara actually that said you didn't send me all of the job descriptions that we had talked about on the first month's organizational chart. So I did want to respond to you on that. After we went back and looked through the chart again, some of the titles in the original chart have actually, so if you look on page of your document, page 38, which would be the document number 11.1.1.4. This is your agenda item, page number 38. It lists the position titles, yes. So I did not send you, well, I only sent you the COO and the digital literacy, the HR generalist, which became an analyst, the accounting manager, the digital content coordinator, and the volunteer coordinator. So after we, so there's 6 total. I sent you 6 total job descriptions, and there were a few more that were identified on that original organization chart when we did the budget review meeting in what month was that? April. Sorry, they're all starting to merge together in April. And so, because what happened is when I started examining the titles more, we have incumbents in the agency right now that have those like classifications. So basically, they're just their counterparts. Like Kathy Deweese is the youth librarian, right? Yes. So Youth Services Coordinator, right. So we're hiring, and her classification is Librarian 4. So instead of writing a brand new classification at this time, we didn't do that. So, and so if that's confusing to you, we can go back and write a classification, but I have to write a classification for Kathy too, because it would just to make them equivalent. We were placing it at that level.
Right, so I'm sorry, I misheard. I didn't hear the first part. So Kathy's going to be
No, Kathy already is a librarian 4. So yes, so this is just her counterpart, but in the adults, yes.
No, this doesn't need to be a job classification for that, but just tell us maybe on this list what level it is.
It is a library. It'll be a librarian 4. And it actually says that on the adult services coordinator / librarian, 4.
Oh, I see it.
And in the actual current Librarian 4 classification, which I could send to you, it does encumber some of those duties already. So the job classifications that were done in the COF study back in 2014, before I was here, 13, 14, they're very lengthy and involved. And so some of them were kind of tailored a little bit to people's
specific duties.
Yes, so they have working titles. So what's really important is what's on the salary schedules that have been posted on the website. So we could really start drilling down and revising everybody's specific class, but that could give one person a full-time job.
Right.
So I had in kind of a follow-up, and we don't have to decide this tonight, obviously, because this is all new information. We're going to have to be hiring a new director here, it looks like. So some of that energy is going to have to go in. I mean, you're hiring a lot of people.
Right.
So the COO is an important position for that director, but we won't have a director for a while. So would it make sense to you, because you're an HR person, is that we put off that position and hire an interim director?
It wouldn't make sense from you to not approve the position. I would expect and hope that you would approve the position, but the most important thing would be to get the director on board.
Gotcha. So that would be an understanding. We would approve the position, but we'd wait till the director came on board.
I would say yes, because our number one priority would be to get ourselves a director.
That's what I wanted to hear. So that makes sense.
Well, I just want to comment on that. I'm sorry, Linda. And I think, Tom, did you have a question too? But I think about the chief operating officer position, I think to me it makes sense to hold off on even approving that position. And here's why. Because we don't have a director on board, and we're not going to hire a COO until we get a director. And I would like the director to be participating in the job description too.
But what you said was if we approved it, we wouldn't hire the person until we get a director. So you say don't approve it.
I'm saying hold off on it until we actually hire a director who can help participate in the job description of the COO.
Doesn't look happy.
Well, are you sure that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think Tom's been waiting. Tom and then Linda.
The no more hours is my greatest concern this year, because we started off, I've only been here about 8 months, but we were going to have 66 hours was being talked about, and we're going to have that by the end of this calendar year or early next calendar year. And the reality came in that it's just too complicated to do that. However, from a political point of view, this was the biggest thing that drove Measure Y. And I think we need to keep up an incremental activity on that. So we mentioned a 10-year budget projection, but we're talking about having a commitment for 18-19 that we're going to have more hours. and things like that. So I think we do have to have some budget projections about how this is going to play out over the next 2 to 5 years to really see what's going on. I'm going to say I don't think we're going to get that before we approve this budget. I just don't think it's possible. But I do think we need to have that worked on and ready for our next annual budget, where we really have a plan, what we're going to have this year that's going to go down, what's going to go up, so we can get more hours, because that's what people want, really. We could tell them we're doing all this other stuff, and they don't care. I'm just going to say that. It seems to me advertising for all these positions we have on page 39 here, from the chief operating officer down to 2 part-time library aides, at one time would be an awful lot for the HR department to absorb at one time. Do you plan on doing some of this in June and some of this in July and some of this in August, or all in June?
I definitely wouldn't plan on doing a lot of it until I got the HR analyst on my side.
That's what I was thinking too. You need extra help so you can make this happen.
I need not extra help. I need actually a permanent person.
Right, definitely.
Okay. So then my next question relates to, if you're going to take 6 to 8 weeks probably into the year to get that person and maybe a few other people there, we may be at least a quarter to a half year before we get all these people in place. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so then that comes back to Ken and budget projections. And to me, that means that however much this adds up to, we're probably not going to spend 100% of it in this calendar year or budget year. We're going to spend 70% of it maybe, or I don't know. And so that comes to a projection, and that comes back to the idea I would like quarterly reports on how we're going, on what's happening, and can we make some money available during this budget year for more hours? That's what I really want to see, because I think that's the commitment we made to the public when they voted for Y. And if we don't at least keep it going in some way, we're going to get some gripes. So that's really what I would like to see, that we get something in there somehow, where towards the end of the year and we have some extra property tax money or whatever, or maybe we don't have it and then we can't do it. But I really want to work on that to see if we can get something for more hours during this budget year.
Commissioner Garcia.
I also agree that none of this can happen without an HR generalist. And secondly, I would say to you that these positions were based on populations of 4 million, 1.5 million, and we are 500,000. We are talking about the chief operating officer at $182,500. And how would that read on the front of the Press Democrat, especially when we don't have a director right now? Inadvertently, giving a job description for the chief operating officer impacts the job description of the director, which is the purview of the commission. And I think we should look at each one of these individually, but unlike Supervisor Heavenridge, I am not willing to stay here until midnight, though I think it's admirable. And I believe we should look at these things carefully, and I believe ours first. And there are some positions I could vote on right now. I mentioned the one about human resources generalist. And then all of the other ones, why aren't we looking at phasing them in? To commit to $1 million right now, I don't think is a good idea. But that is just my opinion. And we can talk about this, and we can vote on the motion that was on there. But I will also point out to you that when we didn't have this challenge of having the money, the Y money, we would have a budget session of a day and a half. We now have the money, and we were in a budget session for 3.5 hours. And again, I would like to thank the person who put out the job descriptions on Saturday morning. But there is something to having them posted so the general public can look at them. There is something to that. And I didn't even consider that before I said that. But the other thing is, it's not about the person from Rohnert Park. The chair of the Finance Committee has some questions, those should be answered. We should all feel really comfortable with that. And it's not about trust. It's about what is the public perception. It's about how fast we're going. And when people don't feel completely comfortable for this. Otherwise, what happens is people vote no. And I think we should look at each position individually. Thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner May.
I just have one comment. Well, maybe I'll have more. I did have a chance to look at the COO job description partly, and I would just like to really, for the hiring, I saw that there's a requirement. We had this discussion last time for a library degree or equivalent. In essence, from what I can gather from the structure we're being presented, that person is running a whole lot of the operation of the library. And I believe librarians are special people and have a special mission and a special view of what libraries are and can be. So I would just urge that when the hiring is happening, if we approve that, that be given real priority in terms of the person. I think a person who has been to library school, has experience in libraries, and has that spirit of libraries is really important. That's all.
Any other comments? Commissioner Ebright.
I'm afraid so. First, we do have a motion on the table.
Right.
Okay.
I haven't forgotten that.
Okay. I think Commissioner McKenzie said that one of the things passing a budget does is it sets policy priorities. And I think that by what I see in this budget, okay, and I did not attend the budget session. I was unable to be there. But what I see in this budget is a necessary or a series of necessary first steps to ensure that we can take further steps, that we have the staff in place, that we have the collection in place, and that we are meeting our financial obligations for things like OPEB, and again, I was an English major, but to me a budget is slightly more than a guideline. Budgets can change, reality changes, finances change, and you make those changes when you need to. But I think what we need to do as a commission is say, this is the direction we're going in, and this budget takes us in the direction we want to go in.
Okay, thank you. And any other comments at this time from the commission? Because I just want to make sure that everybody gets to say what they want to say about the budget. Commissioner McKenzie?
Well, I just feel like I need to read this one paragraph. And I realize I'm sitting here feeling like, the bad guy and whatever, but I'm going to read this anyway. The library will face an annual budget deficit of $820,000 in 5 years if we follow the proposed spending plan, even if we pay enough to stabilize unfunded liabilities for pensions and retiree health care. Such payments are not included in the proposed budget. While the library has healthy reserves, they are not adequate to cover these costs while meeting standard reserve requirements. Now, standard reserve requirements, talking to Ken, that's up to the organization to decide what their reserves are. But I am just, again, troubled because I just got this. I feel I can't vote for a budget without Ken talking to the budget analyst and just answering this. I would feel irresponsible to get something from the city that I represent saying this is going to result in a big deficit without an answer to this. And I want that's my feeling. Thank you.
All right, I want to allow an opportunity for any member of the public who wishes to comment on the item that we have been talking about, the budget, if they want to come forward. Seeing no one, we do. Sorry, Commissioner Hauser.
I want to discuss what the motion is we have in front of us. And I think the motion is that we would defer voting up or down on this budget tonight and wait for 2 weeks. So my question is, does anybody, other than what was just mentioned here about the question of deficit spending, is there any other issue that needs to be addressed during that 2-week period of time that anybody has out there? What do you mean by the posting of the job descriptions?
The job descriptions that came to us on Saturday, that they would hit the web for the public to see.
So we have the question of reviewing the job descriptions and the issue of whether there is a deficit here.
And also I would like for the next vote for the portion about the job, approving the job titles is to, and others may have additional opinions, but to separate the chief operating officer from this list of approval so that we can approve it separately if we so desire.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, well,
I think we need time to take a look at it, and we're going to be looking at the director's job description too, and I think that we need to do that we need to do that first before we approve it.
I have a question on the motion. Should people vote yes or no if they're not going to be here in 2 weeks?
I think you have to.
It doesn't matter?
We have to.
Okay.
Besides that, we can attend by phone.
I think everybody who's here tonight should vote unless they have some reason that they should abstain from it. Correct.
Now, is there some question that you feel that we should approve the COO position tonight? I'd like that explained.
It's looking like staff is saying that they are going to be holding off on the COO position until there's a director in place, is what I'm hearing. And so it seems to me that approving the concept of a COO is a big part of this budget, although essentially it's a big part of the operation of the system, but it's a really pretty small part of the budget, overall. But I just feel like I could approve the position tonight or by phone in 2 weeks instead of holding off to approve the position.
But it's part of the budget, the whole budget package, right?
Right.
Well, we could pull it out. Now, there's been the question raised that you raised about should this job description be changed to say it has to be a librarian degree or something like that.
Well, it's in there. I'm just urging the hiring staff to pay special attention to that.
Or equivalent education. Master's degree in library science or equivalent. I'm not sure what equivalent means. So that I thought that's what you were raising there. And that's what I was thinking, that we should not approve it, because by approving the position, we're implicitly approving the job description that's been written here.
All right, so we have a motion on the table. I don't know. Did Reese have a comment?
I was just going to say, if you read the rest of the description, and 5 years of progressive responsible experience in library, which includes 3 years of professional experience in administrative managing operations, or programs in a library, and supervising and evaluating professional and technical library staff. So sometimes
Go through the job descriptions now.
you don't necessarily need specifically a degree in library science. I mean, this covers experience, so.
Okay,
Broadening
my
it out.
suggestion was to try to save some time and I don't think we have a motion on the table. So do you want to, an amendment of what? But the
No,
motion that we
motion
have
is
on
to
the table
have the
is
special
to
meeting.
have the meeting in 2 weeks. That's the motion on the table right now. So, okay. Is everybody clear on what the motion is? And we have a second. And all in favor of the motion? Aye. So we have Randall Neff, Barbara McKenzie, Helena Whistler, Linda Garcia. So it's 4. All opposed? All opposed, all the people who want to vote on it tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 1 abstention. So we have a tie.
Heaven forbid.
I already voted.
No, she's already.
What I'd like to see is excuse me. I'd like to see approving the budget in concept, subject to reviewing the job descriptions, and I would also like to see this discussion about whether we have deficit spending in here. I think it probably is because there's a conception if this is in the budget this year, it's going to be there in the next year and the next year, and maybe that's not there. And if we had a 3-year projection, it probably wouldn't be there. But I'd like to approve it subject tentatively, just so they can say they're moving ahead or something like that, is really where I am. And with the positions and with the expectation that some money's going to become available and we're going to squeeze in some more hours later this budget year, or at least try to.
Is that a motion?
I will so move.
Could you repeat that, please?
Approve the budget in concept, or approve the budget subject to having to approve the job descriptions and that we have a further discussion about whether there is potential deficit spending in future years if this goes out. Just a second. Yeah, I think that's where I am.
Question, maybe I need a clarification. We are accepting all of these positions, and then when we find out that we're going to have a budget deficit in 2 or 3 years, then so what? The thing is, I think we should...
Then I'm going to make a motion that we amend the budget.
You just don't fill them.
I'm sorry, what?
A month from now, we find out that we're going to have a deficit in 2 years. I'm going to say, okay, we need to change this now.
Ken, do you understand the deficit? Is it based on the OPEB and PERS?
I received the email at 4 o'clock today. I've read it over. I think it probably does have something to do with the OPEB. Don, I think he does good work. He also mentions in the memo that any projections are full of assumptions, and the projections I do on a regular basis are full of assumptions. Some of them come true, some of them don't. That's what they are, and so I I don't really know how to answer that question any other way.
No, that's an adequate answer for me. Thank you.
And Ken, is it not true that we can change the budget during the year if we had to modify
Yes.
it?
What David said about an English major, the way he interprets the budget, is it's a budget or a projection is invalid tomorrow because things change, and so you can always change the way things are. Yes.
So we accept this budget, and then next month we could say we're going to take 2 or 3 positions out? Is that what I'm hearing you say? No. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yes?
Yeah.
Yes?
Sure.
Yeah, we could decide that we're going to do that.
They won't be happy, but we could.
And I understand that, but the thing is, I really feel you're the one, Tom, who talked about people voted for hours.
I agree.
And this is administratively, and I'm not saying it is, I'm saying the perception is it's administratively top-heavy. And that to approve every position, is that what you're saying? Thank you.
It's not.
And I'll explain that as I've tried to explain it before. We're not going to have these people hired June 1st. Some of these people may not be hired for 6 months, simply because human resources can't do this. We found that out already this budget year, how difficult this is. So I have a feeling that maybe we can go out and spend it on the technology right away, but the people it's going to lag, and we're going to have, I don't know, is it $2.5–3 million on this page 39, all these employees we're talking about? We're going to have a fair amount of that there, and we can start incrementally saying, okay, later on we can put a couple more hours here, a couple more hours there, so we say we're doing something this year. That's my expectation, that this is going to be loose enough for us towards the end of the budget year to do something like that as a minimum.
And also have a plan for next year that we're going to work on to increase hours.
2 years forward.
Yeah, which we will be working on.
I really think we have to have that, how these things, these fungible funds, this is going to go up, this is going to go down. We really need to try to work that out. And we can't do that in the short term. That's going to take a hell of a lot of work. And Ken needs to have his assistant there, too, to do some of that stuff.
No, in no way do I think that there shouldn't be an HR generalist or an accounting person. But when looking at all of these positions, do we really even need a chief operating officer?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, I honor your opinion, Reese, but my position is that's really administrative, top heavy. And let me just finish my...
I will.
Okay. And that a director should be doing this for the population that we have in Sonoma County. What we looked at, how it was presented, were populations 2 and 3 times of what's in Sonoma County, and can be perceived as being administratively top-heavy. We have to go back to the voters in 10 years to get this money back, to get this money again. Also, the support of the Board of Supervisors and all the cities of the JPA. And that means we're locking up our money, is what that's saying to me. And the chief operating officer for something this size is really a lot. And that is just my opinion, but I wanted clarification. And it's now 9:45.
So what motion is on the table?
Well, I don't think there is any motion. I made a motion to approve the budget subject to our later approval of the job descriptions and with the assumption that the issue of a possible deficit in this budget be addressed within the next month by the next regular meeting, that meeting occur and so forth.
I'll second for discussion.
All right.
I want to go back to something I said last year, which is I feel as a responsible party the commission needs to individually approve new positions, not as a part of a whole budget, but individually approve positions. This kind of gets to something Linda's saying. And so I also want, Tom, in your motion, you're talking about approving the descriptions, which is different than approving the positions. If we adopt this budget as it stands, of course, the assumption is there that we're going to hire these positions. It's not pawing through the individual the descriptions and, wordsmithing or understanding or whatever. And my question is much more about approving the positions. And I think if we took them one by one and said, do we want to plan on spending whatever it is, $200,000 to COO, for the foreseeable future, because once we approve this process is going to go into force. And we're committing to that. I think we should take these, if we're going to do this, we need to take these positions one by one and vote on them one by one. My feeling in particular is the digital. There's 2 digital positions. There's an outreach coordinator position. Some of these, to me, like they're, might be a good idea, but are they essential to what my priority is, sounds like what your priority is, which is the hours. I don't see people personally bang on the doors, give me more digital media stuff. I mean, maybe they are, and I just don't know it. But my feeling is the people that I talk to would rather be open till 6 o'clock on Saturdays and part of Sundays. I would rather put the money there. If we approve this budget, include all these positions, we are committing this money. We can't come back in 3 months and go, boop, don't take that $200,000 out. Because the process is going in place. We've approved it in concept. So I don't know what to say. I for sure believe that it's the responsibility of this body to individually approve new positions and go on record as approving new positions because they're permanent additions to the cost of the library budget. So that's just one thing I'll say for discussion.
You look like you had a comment, Reese.
Yeah, once again, we're not filling the position. I mean, how long have positions in the county, because they have not had money, been empty? It's creating the infrastructure so that when we get to that place, then we can fill it, and we don't have to do a lot of work to do it.
County policy on unfilled positions is you can only keep them in your department budget for so long, and then they're taken out. So it's not a forever thing.
But in this budget, if we approve this budget, we are approving those positions. We're not approving infrastructure, we're approving those positions and the budgeted amount for those positions. We might not fill them for a few months, and as Tom said, we might save a little money along the way, but we are approving those positions. And so it's different than, creating an infrastructure for what?
Randall, did you have a comment? Tom, any more comments?
I think I've talked enough.
Tim.
Do you have a comment too? I'll go first. Oh, thank you. I don't want to use the word trust. Respect probably is the best word. I respect that our staff has given us their proposal for what they think needs to be available for them to do 2 things. To run a library system, I don't care about the population, a library system that has a $30 million budget, because that's another way of judging systems. And that, so I respect that they have given us, and in terms of their interpretation, to fill the promises that we've made to the public. Now, I think it's pretty clear that across the sway of the commission, for the most part, all of us are saying, but we also promised ours, and we don't want to lose sight of that. But I would vote in favor of this budget out of a sense of the professionals are telling me what it is they think we need. And I don't know. I haven't asked them. Have you, what's the word I'm looking for? Have you fluffed up the positions, or is this a bare bones set of positions, or whatever?
Well, you're ready for me to talk, because we have narrowed this down to what we believe, not think, but believe is necessary to run a system at the level that our public in Sonoma County is expecting. Some of us, myself included, have worked in other agencies that have a COO and a number of these other positions that are listed here. It's not a pipe dream. It really is a reality. When we looked at the last 9 months of the work that we performed, Ken, Keo, myself, and Brett, before Suzanne got here, we were buried. And we couldn't keep our fingers on the pulse of the whole entire organization. And so we determined that our director really does need to be out in the community, whoever he or she is, making the connections with the community, with the businesses and the chambers and all of the communities that are involved in the JPA. And work 18, 20 hours a day, because we better put that in the job description of the new director. So my real belief about this is that these positions are what we believe we need to have to ramp it up so that one day, someday soon, we get to 66 hours a week. I want to also point out one more thing, and I don't mean to be impudent here, but we did share with you a PowerPoint presentation about ramping up from 52 to 66 hours a week. And I'll remind all of you that you said, hey, whoa, slow down, slow down. And so we did slow down, and we realized that we had to slow down. And when we hired this round of people, it really took everything we had and a bag of chips. And I think it's really, really important that you understand, all of us that are sitting here in this room that work for the library are committed fully and totally to ramping up to a total of 66 hours a week. We thought we were going to be able to do that sooner. We're admitting that we misspoke about that. We'd love to be able to do that tomorrow. We know that change is hard. We know what we experienced with the existing staff right now. And I just really want you to hear that nobody's fluffing anything up. We're talking about what it is we absolutely think we need. And, you know, if any of my other colleagues would like to, I encourage them to step in and say so.
I want to respond to that. I think I've been here long enough, and I've seen how the staff has worked the extra hours when we had less money and shorter hours, and they really put in a lot of extra time to keep the library going, the system going. And now that we have the money, I fully trust the staff that these are positions that's going to push us forward to where we want to be with those hours. And I do remember that presentation of increasing the hours. And I think if there's concern of the other commissioners that the public is going to perceive this, that we're hiring staff instead of putting more hours in, I think it's up to us and this, working with the staff to make sure that we have a clear plan that we advertise and market. This is our plan. We can't do it all at once in day one. We finally got to Monday, yay. And this is our plan over the next year or so of doing those hours. But I agree. I've been listening your presentation, the other commission meeting on the budget meeting, why you needed these positions. And I can't disagree on any of these.
I just want to point out that Keo, has worked 7 days a week.
I know
for months and months. Drive by the library.
Absolutely.
7 days. She is here when I leave. and she is here before I get there in the morning. And I come in early and spend lots of extra time too. So I just want you to
all
understand.
of you do. And
I think we're
the
not
commission
questioning that.
realizes that, and it's this is really important to get the staff up to the point where you guys really can do your work. I know up to this point it's been a Band-Aid, so I agree with that. No, it has, and so I'm gonna third this motion to pass this budget tonight. I mean, this is absurd. I think. Well, didn't you put a motion?
Okay, so we do have a motion, but it has some. Yes, we do, but it has some amendments.
Qualifications.
Conditions. Yes, thank you. It's late.
Your mic.
The job descriptions need to be approved by the commission, and within the next month, we have to have some kind of report by next month about this question about deficit spending in 3 years, so that we can say, well, maybe we need to pull back a little bit,
Okay.
or we don't.
So the motion on the table is for a conditional approval of the budget, correct?
Yes.
As described. All right, and we have a second. So all in favor?
We have a second.
Yes, we have a second.
I just need clarification. Are you saying job description approval, not position approval? So he's saying
descriptions, not the positions.
So by voting for this, we are approving all the positions.
That's correct.
Is that clear to everybody? We're not going to go through one by one. Everybody understands that.
Okay. But we're going to look at the approving the descriptions one by one and within a month. Is that correct? Okay. So that's the motion on the table.
So just to be clear, so with this motion, we would pass the budget, and we reserve the right that in the future, in a month, we could say, well, we'll take that position out. But right now, we're okaying all those positions.
That's not what he's saying.
That's what he's saying.
He's saying descriptions.
Yes.
Yeah. He's not saying the positions. He's not saying we withhold the right to approve the positions later on.
We have the right to amend the budget at any time. We did it a couple of 3 months ago when we added extra positions so that we could get started today with our extra hours. That was a change in the current budget we're in. We can do that in the other direction. We can say, we don't have extra money, we're going to cut back. We're going to fire that person because we don't have enough money to keep that position, even though we probably need it, but we're going to get rid of it. So that's something we can do.
Been there,
and
done
before
that.
my time, this commission did do that when times were really tight, I understand. That cut back happened. So we have the flexibility to do these things. And what we're approving is the positions, reserving the right to approve the job descriptions, and we're expecting to get some kind of report on this potential deficit spending over a period of years by the next meeting.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
2 noes. I'm make that 3 noes.
So how many yes?
How many yeses? You're going to roll call.
Yes, we should. So
5 to 3.
Okay, I'll start. I vote yes.
Paul Heavenridge, yes.
Aye. Yes.
No.
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 Yes, Hauser.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that's 3 to 6, is that correct? 6 to 3, right? All righty, so moving on to the next item.
Ken, did you have something?
I just wanted to make sure, do you need, as far as the job descriptions go, between now and the next commission meeting, do you need anything more, or
If we think of something, should we contact Suzanne Silva directly? Or
I think
you-
just a list. For me, I mean, you mentioned that there's some of them that are basically restatements of already existing positions. So if you could just give on the list existing, new, existing. That would be satisfactory.
I'll send you the existing positions that we did not send you the descriptions
Right,
for.
but you've given us all the new ones.
Yes.
Thank you.
And also, so this means we're not going to have a special meeting, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
We're not going to have a special budget meeting.
Special
correct.
budget meeting, yes. Okay, correct. Thank you.
And then I'll talk to Don, and we'll have a meeting and go over the assumptions he took into place, and I'll report back on that. Okay, thank you.
If I may just make, I think another thing that the Finance Committee Chair commented on is that I think what's happened is we've been given a significant change, which we all knew Measure Y would do. And if we had been in some way on the framework of your thinking about the budget or whatever earlier in the process, it wouldn't have come as such a surprise to us and such a thing that we needed to think about over a period of time. So for next year, if we can begin, this is our conceptual picture of what we're thinking about the budget, to give us a chance for input, I think this would have been good this year.
Thank you, Commissioner May. I think we have talked about having a preliminary budget brought to the Commission in March. Is that correct? Or was it February? We can't, none of us can remember. Earlier.
Yeah, March, I think we were talking about, which would have been a month earlier than
Right.
this year.
I think starting a month earlier and having a really preliminary discussion about the priorities for both, presented by the staff and the Commission's thoughts would be excellent. Thank you.
All right.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that the Commission has the responsibility also of setting its priorities. So I want to make a point again about I hope that we get a professional to work with us longer term, same person, and develop our priorities. And so we are part of the ship moving forward, and we're helpful and not viewed as obstructionists to the staff, but we're part of the process. But we need to set our own priorities. Part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. So now we're moving on to item 11.2, which is the contract for additional office space in Roanoke Park. Does anybody have questions about this for Ken?
Yep.
There is a lease office in the county. Did you go through them, or did you just look for space? How did you come about doing this?
We used Keegan and Copen.
Okay.
I believe that's the company's name. The scientists.
But they went and looked for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We went through about 2 or 3 places, I think, or maybe more. Yeah, at least 3.
And Keegan and Copen don't lease this? Copen don't lease this?
No, they're a leasing agent for the...
Leasing agent. Thank you.
Yep.
I have one question, because I know that you sent the lease over to County Council for review, and just wondered, were there any changes?
We haven't heard anything back from them. We're waiting. Normally, I think attorneys always have some sort of changes or questions. The majority of the time they aren't significant, but little word changes here and there. If there was anything significant that changed the terms or anything, we would certainly bring it back before it was executed.
So when do you anticipate it'll be executed?
Well, we won't do it until we hear from the attorneys.
Okay, terrific.
So I could make a motion to approve this contingent upon what the attorneys say,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
And at the same
and the
time,
library director.
Right. Right now it says library director.
So I wonder if in the interim we should change that to commission chair?
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Is there a second?
I'll
Do
second.
we want commission chair or do we want an interim director?
But we may not have an interim director when it's time
be able
to
to sign the
sign it.
We might have an acting director.
How soon are we looking at signing this?
Well, like I said, we had hoped had already heard back from the attorney last week. So if we hear back from them this week and then we shoot our questions back to the owners, I mean, we'd like to have it signed by the end of next week so we can be moving. But that may be a little bit too hopeful. But as soon as possible, basically.
If it's as soon as possible, can't we just this one time have the chair also approve it? And then if legal says it's okay, then they can start moving, is my feeling.
Is it legal to have our chair sign it?
I think so.
Director?
I think, haven't you? In the past, I've
I
seen
think we
chairs
need to
have
ask that
signed
question.
leases.
Yeah.
But we can check with county council.
Check
Right.
with county council.
Right. Yes, definitely.
So, how should we do this motion?
I did a motion. Anybody second it? Okay.
I second it.
Can we have a restatement of the motion?
You're asking them. Okay, so I move that we approve the off-site lease.
Well, all we're being asked to do is authorize
Yes.
the signing of the
Whatever
contract.
we've been asked to do
So
as
we
soon
could
as
have
legal
it
gets
say, I move that the Sonoma County Library Commission authorize the library director or
Designate.
or designated
Designate.
person to execute the contract. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Are you making that? Or do you want me to
Yes.
make it?
Yes, and then will we accept that from the second? Yes, all right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Quick question?
Yes.
Could we just have clarification, just so we all, the commissioners all know, what departments are moving to that space, and also what's going to happen to the basement where all those people are? Just so information.
Currently, materials management / collections will be moving to that department. Cataloging all the vehicles, the maintenance and delivery vehicles. Delivery will be based out of that space. The budget and finance office are also moving there. And you had one other question.
And you are not moving there.
It was right. I was not moving.
Would you be the only finance person that's still at Central, and everybody else is going to be down there?
That was the thinking, yes.
Okay.
And I'd be down there 1 or 2 days a week or
Yeah.
whatever it took to make sure things were moving ahead. But
And the other half of my question was, is anybody going to go down
that's right.
in that space?
then the plan is to really fix up the lower level to make it usable, nice office space for the central staff to move down there. And then where most of the central staff now is on the level you walk in from the back door, that would become the processing area for Central Branch. So there wouldn't be stuff moving up and down the elevator. It'd all be on one level, make it much more efficient, things like that. Because that elevator is a pinch point for a number of processes that go on.
And I think you mentioned the other day to me that there's a possibility that in the future the archives that are currently out at Los Guilicos may also move down there?
That's something that, it's kind of rattling around in the back of my head because I know it's such a priority to get it out of there. And what I'm hoping, we'll see. What we really have to see once we get everything in place and the processes in place in the new area, if there is enough room to move that stuff. Yep.
Great. That'd be terrific. All right, so we already approved this, correct? Yes. That takes us to 11. 11.3, authorize director to renew contract with Kaiser Permanente for employee and retiree medical benefits.
So essentially, this was already basically included in the update of the benefits. I guess now I would just need you to authorize the designee of the director.
I so move.
I second.
Thank you.
All in favor? Aye.
I recuse myself from the vote.
Okay, so that takes us to item 12, adjourn the meeting in memory of Solomon Tesfaye.
Did you want to read it or so move? So move.
No, I think we should read it.
Okay.
I think we should read it. I just...
I can read it. Oh, you're going to read it?
I was wondering if somebody from staff wanted to read it.
Do you have it? Here.
Hopefully I won't start crying.
Thank you. Whereas the longtime Sonoma County Library employee Solomon Mahari Tesfaye passed away on Thursday, March 23, 2017, and whereas Solomon worked in the Sonoma County Library for nearly 17 years, most of those years as a library services specialist, and whereas Solomon was currently working as a library services specialist for the Central Branch Library and the Budget and Finance Department, and whereas Solomon was much loved by fellow staff, always greeted staff with a joyful smile and happiness, loved the library and enjoyed working with everyone, was highly dedicated to his work, had a strong work ethic, and had a very humble personality. And whereas, as stated in his memorial bulletin, Solomon was known as the Etrian community in Santa Rosa and the Greater Bay Area and beyond for his direct and honest approach to any situation. His humble and kind personality and his generous and dedicated participation in all social affairs. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Sonoma County Library Commission that the members of the Sonoma County Library Commission hereby express their most heartfelt gratitude to Solomon Mahari Tesfaye and honor him on this day for his extensive contributions to the library and the community of Sonoma County, and that when the Commission adjourns this day, it does so in memory of Solomon Mahari Tesfaye.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you so much, Vicki. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Does the family receive a copy of this?
That's part of the process.
Yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and the last agenda item in our packet.
We have a member of the public who...
Oh, I'm sorry. Thomas, would you like to approach, please?
It's kind of a unique situation. Solomon and Maza are Orthodox Christians in the Eritrean community, and they're members and had been for many years of the Mountain View Orthodox community there, and I've known them about 23 years, and very wonderful people, both of them. I just saw Maza on Sunday, not this Sunday, last Sunday, excuse me. Great people. Just as a community thing that struck me was that I was walking around in town at this Starbucks over by Safeway, and this is now I think it's about almost a year ago, And I don't remember the exact date, forgive me. I think it was in July, something like that. And he was walking around with a friend, and I said, "Hi, how are you?" and so on. And I said I wanted to express to him the loss that I felt for Sirach Tisfazji. I don't know if you know about him. He had the poetry books and so on. He was stabbed in the community. He's Eritrean, and he said, "Thank you very much. This is his father." And I was shocked because I didn't know his father, and they were talking, and like was said, he was a very respected man in the community, taking on a very humble position at the library. And I spoke with them for a few minutes, and he was very appreciative. They were both very appreciative, and I've since gone on to quote the poetry and read Sirach's poetry. It's profound. The poetry that he wrote is profound. Encapsulated, he's really talking about diversity. Most of what I've read of his poetry revolves around his thoughts about diversity. Very complicated words. Simple, if you really get down to it, simple thoughts. But he selected really interesting, complicated words that almost everyone has to look it up in a dictionary to understand, because they don't. One of which I could say is, and maybe you know it, just the beginning of it is, as does verarium, sedates perception and nuances and necessitates it's hard for me to go on for that. But the point is, and there's only a few lines. What is verarium? It's Latin. And the quote was actually, the Latin part would be, cum notus variarum. So it's with the various notes. You can understand something like from St. Jerome's Hexapla, 6 Bibles, and he makes one. So with the notes, you have 6 and you can understand it. And without the notes, so cum notus variarum, and would take that off. You just have variarum. It's pretty weird without the notes to tell us what it is. Take 6, make 1. What happened there? A loss of diversity. That's one example of the complexity of what he's talking about. And a very simple few lines, just a very few lines. But that's what the Eritrean community brings to us. And Solomon was one of those, a very well-respected man in their community, believe me. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's see. So lab appointments, and these look like they're Cloverdale appointments. So Commissioner Foxen, would you like to read them?
I move by resolution that the Sonoma County Library Commission appoint the following applicant to the terms as listed: Bob Cox to a position on the Cloverdale Library Advisory Board, and Jane Snibby for the reappointment to the Cloverdale Library Advisory Board for terms ending on June 30, 2021.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so what items shall be included in the commission notes? This is item 14 on the agenda, if you have thoughts on
Budget.
The budget approval and the announcement of the resignation of the director.
Successful opening Monday.
Successful.
that. Probably should fill it up pretty well. If you have other thoughts, let me know. Then the agenda items for future commission meetings, item 15. One thing that I was thinking of is to hear, I know with all this new staff, and we have a training person now, it would be great to get a little more detail. I know there was some detail in the management report, but it would be great to get a report on what training is being put together and given to staff. I think the commission has long been interested in making sure that there is sufficient training in different areas, including violence in the workplace and all of those items. So we would love to have a report from possibly Suzanne Silva, or
I can have a report, or I can either have Kyle come to give a report. Which would you prefer?
That would be.
Okay.
It would be great if you did
I can
report
do it.
together, kind of a collaborative.
If we do it early in the evening, he can come. Well, no, not just for him. He works very hard. Okay.
Obviously, it's 10.
Not that we all do.
10:20 now, so sure, early is better.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm not sure which meeting, if it's June or July or something. You tell me what you think you need to do that.
Will there be a break in the June hiring or next month? We'll figure it out, and then I'll let you know. We'll put it on the agenda, though. Okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
great.
Thank you.
We need to have on next month's agenda those two items about the budget, the deficit issue, and the job descriptions.
Okay.
So we have to have, those are things that need to be on next month's calendar.
Okay.
I think we should have a report from the commission, or maybe the commission chair, on the status of interim director search, what the status of that is.
Yes, definitely. And we may need to call a special meeting to approve the process and hear more what the commission wants in it going forward. So yes, definitely. Yes. All right, and with that, our next meeting will be Monday, June 5th at 6:30, and we are adjourning now at 10:22 by acclamation.